Hello, my name is Dr. Maya Byfield. My business is The Phenomenal STEMist. I'm so excited to be here in Orange County because it's where I live. I live in Apopka, Florida. And I decided to make this business because I saw a need for underrepresented students to be successful in STEM, which stands for science, technology, engineering, math. And the best way I can do that is just provide products for parents to prepare them, whether it's a book or online STEM camps or just video podcasting. My goal is to transform this community, especially those who are underrepresented. And the way to do that is to help parents understand their children's minds and basically develop them at different stages of their lives to be prepared for a successful STEM career. Thank you so much. That's why I'm here.
Hey, it's the phenomenal STEMist. Good evening, everyone. Kevin Ploche, how are you doing?
I am doing awesome. Always a pleasure. How you doing?
I am doing well. We have Kevin Ploche from How Money Works with Wealth Wave. How are you doing, everybody? I see people in the chat. Who's in the chat? I know it's my mother. Must be my mother. Yeah, it's the number one fan in the house. Number one fan in the house. Um, listen. We are talking about the friends of wealth. We're going to get right into it. But before I start talking about the friends of wealth, please remember you must check out my book, The Phenomenal STEMist. It's on Amazon right now. Don't forget to educate your children in STEM for a successful career. Um, but you can have any career that's successful if you know how to manage your wealth. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And I've been talking with Delani about the frenemies and enemies. So I said it's Fifth Monday. I know I would ask you to come on Fifth Mondays. So you're gonna talk about the friends. Friends are so important. Are friends important?
How many of us have them?
Yeah, friends. One
Absolutely.
that can depend on. Yeah. So friends are important. Enemies, you got to watch out for them, but focus on your friends too. And since it's the dreaded football season, everybody's talking about it, or my beloved basketball season, I want to focus on the concept of offense versus defense.
Okay, okay.
You got offensive friends, you got defensive friends. And of course, where I'm from, defense wins championships. So I want to start with the defensive friends first. So, what are the friends of wealth? Let's start with the defensive ones.
Yeah. So if we're talking defensive friends of wealth, we have to start at the estate planning side of things, right? How do we protect our legacy that we are trying to build? That wealth that we're trying to build, there has to be mechanisms in place that we can protect it. So making sure that you have wills in place, making sure that you have a trust in place, knowing the differences between the two is very key so that not only can you just, as you're building your wealth, you're protecting it you're protecting it from those enemies that we talked about. Number one is taxes, right? So we talked
Yeah.
about, I know you guys talked about that last time. So making sure that you have those systems in place, those items in place to protect that wealth is key. It's important, very very important. Now, understanding the differences between the two could be kind of tricky. Understanding what a will is, because most people say, "Hey, I just need a will. If I have a will, that will cover me." But there's a big difference between having a will and having a trust. Um,
Mm-hmm.
go through that real quick. So a will is just a notarized document that goes to the probate court system, right? So if you have assets, all you're saying is, this is what I would wish to happen to my assets if something were to happen. A will, however, doesn't protect those assets, right? It just lets the court system know what you desire to happen with those assets, but it doesn't protect it. So I like to give this analogy where we've all been invited to this party, right? And you have your family on one side, and then you have some special guests on the other side.
Special guests.
The special guests,
They're
and
not
these,
important when it comes to my assets. Okay.
but we all know who those special guests are. Those are your
Yeah.
creditors, right? The creditors, right? And in the probate court process, there's a VIP line, right? And guess who goes in the VIP line? Is it your family on one side or is it the special guests?
The special guests get
It's the special guests,
special guests get the food first.
right?
Not
So
in my house.
so, so let's say you had a mortgage that you didn't that you still you have a property that you still have a mortgage on, right? Although your will says I would like my property to go to my son, daughter, XYZ, because you still have a mortgage on it, it's not protected. So that VIP, that creditor goes in that VIP line, and they actually have first dibs on said property, right, or anything else that you owe on there. So you could potentially lose that, right? So your family's walking in, and they're expecting $1 million estate, but by the time the probate process is over, they could lose a significant amount of that estate,
Even with a will, yeah.
even
With
with the
the
will,
will.
right? Now how does a trust fit into this? um Give you an example here. You ever seen the movies when somebody passes and somebody gets letters in the mail, and then they show up in the boardroom, and then this really
Yeah,
stiff
yeah,
guy, he walks in, he with the briefcase, he opens up the briefcase and he starts naming what people get?
yeah.
That's a trust. That's how a trust works in essence, right? It's like having an imaginary box, and everything goes of important goes into that box. All your assets, those properties and those documents like the will, healthcare directive, power of attorneys, all those things go in there, and it gets locked up. And then that executor, which is that stiff guy who just walked in, that's your executor. He goes in and he's able to share what those desires were. Now, notice in that example, there are no court systems involved. When
Mm-hmm.
you have a trust, you bypass the entire
Probate court.
probate process altogether, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's say, for instance, you owed on that mortgage in that first example, right? Now, because the property is now in the name of the trust and not the name of the individual, now it is protected from creditors, right?
Yeah.
So what the executor is able to say to said mortgage company, they could say, well, from the proceeds of this trust, we're going to pay off this mortgage, so leave us alone. Or from the proceeds of this trust, we're going to maintain the monthly mortgage.
Wow.
So
Did
so
not know that.
so leave us alone, right? So the trust gets to dictate what happens because it's in the name of the trust and not the name of an individual. So that's where the protective layer of your assets come in, or your wealth comes into play, when you have that mechanism in place.
I've always heard about getting the trust. And shout out to Sean H.W. Smith,
Mr. Smith.
Mr. Smith, who has
Yes,
been
sir.
talking to me about getting a trust all year long. And it's November. And shame on me.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna do it, Sean.
Yeah.
Promise. I'm coming. Shame on me. Um, and the more assets you get, the more important you have to do this. For those of you who don't have many assets or you don't have much credit, you don't need a trust. Like, well, you do need. You don't
So
need necessarily a trust. Like, so for instance, some people just have property. They could do a Lily Bird deed, and then they could put, and then all of their accounts, they have successors. Once that's in place, if you don't have any debt, you don't need a trust. I need a trust because I have debt, and I'm also acquiring different types of assets that are not, that I can't just write. Um, this is my beneficiary. Like, I could do that for my Roth. I could do that for, certain
right,
things. But
right.
yeah, and the
So
more beneficiaries you have, the more complicated it gets too. Yeah.
and that's where that will comes in, right?
Hmm.
Because then that's able to be spelled out in the will. And a good point that you have, that you mentioned there. There are some assets that pass through that entire court system. You don't need a trust for it. Things like retirement accounts, life insurance, things of those. When you have a beneficiary to it, it bypasses that whole entire process as well. So, keeping that in mind as well, which leads to the next defensive mechanism. If we're moving to the next part there,
We're talking about defensive friends, y'all. Defense
defensive.
wins championships. Yes. What's the next one?
So the next one is actually life insurance, right? Most people look at life insurance and they say, well, it's just for my death, but it's actually really not. There's more to life insurance than meets the eye, or that what we've been told. And the reason why I say it, and it actually can work as both a defensive and an offensive tool. What we know in the industry is that insurance is going to be one of the most versatile financial tools that you're going to have in your portfolio, because it is the only mechanism that replaces whatever you lose. So here's what I mean by that. There's four things that we look at to determine how much coverage a family would need or individual would need. First, we look at debt, because there's a big myth out there that says if something happens to me, my debt just disappears,
Doesn't.
right? It goes to your family. So you want to have a protective measure that covers in the case that you have student loans, credit cards, mortgages, things of that nature outstanding, right? The second thing we look at is income replacement. This is where we look at your salary and we multiply that by 10, and for income replacement. So if you have a family, your family would be able to live off of 10 or 20 years of your income, right? The third thing we look at is mortgage. Like we said before, it is a debt until it's paid off, right? A liability until it's an asset, right? So you want to have that protective measure. And the last thing we look at is education. So if you still have young kids, you want them to still live the dream of going to school, you could prorate an amount in there, right? So those are the four things that we look at basically. But the reason why I say it can be a defensive and an offensive tool is because, let's say for instance, you're on your way to building your wealth and something happens, God forbid. That life insurance now becomes an instant legacy builder for the next generation,
Mm-hmm.
right? Give you case in point. I have a client whose mother unfortunately passed away due to cancer. Not only did she have a retirement account, but she also had a life insurance account. And now her daughter or the beneficiary is now a millionaire just because of the fact that her mom had these devices in place,
Mm.
right? So as we're looking and as we're building our wealth, having those mechanisms in place to ensure that your legacy lives on is going to be key as well.
My mother asked a question. She said, "Do seniors need to take out life insurance in the later years?" I'll let you answer that because you're a finance guy. But I always discourage her to do that, and the reason why I discourage her to do that, is because she has multiple types of assets, none of which have any debt. She only has one child, and her child is financially taken care of. I wouldn't want her to put any more money into anything just so that I can get wealth. So I think it all depends. What do you think?
And I would totally agree with that. When we say it depends on your family's dynamic and their situation,
Yeah.
right? If you have a wealth builder like Dr. Byfield right here, and you have those things in place where, because in the later years there's things that you are going to designate that policy for. That policy, when you get into those later years, you're looking more towards final expenses, right? So the service and all of that comes with it, and
And she
normally,
already has that taken care of.
exactly. So if that's the
Cash
case,
money.
exactly. So if that's the case, because that's in those later years, that's really what it's about for those individuals. You've already have your assets set up, and your things of that nature. So it's really about looking at those final expenses. Um, um,
But
so
if you
but
don't have it, if you don't have cash money laid up, get some insurance, please. Don't have your kids having to struggle to bury you, please, or taking out GoFundMe. GoFundMe is not a life insurance policy, y'all.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the general cost is anywhere between $15,000 and $20,000 for final expenses to take care of the entire thing, from start to finish. So if you're a family that doesn't have that put away right now, that's where you can have specialized policies, life, final expense plans that are lower in face amount that covers specifically for final expenses, right? So again, it just depends on your family dynamics. Good question though.
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, so in that perspective, so going back, and what I like to call life insurance is the great equalizer as it relates to wealth building, right? Because you talked about in the sessions before, you talked about how health is a big factor in not only yourself but in your wealth building. The amount of years that you have to live, helps you gives you more time to build that wealth,
Yeah,
right? But in the midst of that not happening, what do you have to ensure that that lives on, right? So that's where we talk about those defensive mechanisms. So that estate planning piece and that life insurance piece is the defensive pieces of the game there.
absolutely, absolutely. Okay. So defensive. My mother says it's frozen. I'm not frozen. I'm on green. Kevin's on green.
Yeah, we're good. We're
I
good.
think we're good. All right. So defensive, we got making sure we have proper estate planning. Trust is more important. We dropping viewers. Is it still frozen?
Oh,
I don't see. I don't. Let me check it out. According to me, it's green and Wi-Fi is working fine, but I'm not seeing any comments. So let's see. Let me go on my. No, it's looking fine. Let's see. Is my iPhone showing? I'm watching it live. Am I
yep.
watching it live?
I see the red iPhone.
Yeah, it's fine. Okay, so it's not frozen. Okay. Oh, it was frozen.
Okay, we're back.
Yeah, yeah, we're back.
Your technology department says we're back on.
Okay. All right, let's go back to the technology department. Thank you, technology department over there. Okay, so we got will versus trust, or making sure that if you just have a will, that you have no outstanding debt and you have every asset deeded out or with some kind of beneficiary tool. Otherwise, gets you with trust, right? You'll avoid probate. Your goal is to avoid probate. That's defensive, number one. Very important. Number
Absolutely.
two, making sure you have life insurance. Life insurance that can help you. She asked what's the last question?
Yeah.
Last question. She said that's why I
So,
asked. Final expense costs rise every year. Is that
not necessarily. There are
um,
yeah, there are plans out there that are suited for final expenses, and you're paying you know just like with any other plan, that you get a permanent plan, that you have a plan that that monthly amount stays the same, doesn't change, things of that nature. So it just depends on the type of plan that you select, which I will reiterate over our session here is definitely get with a financial professional that can help you with those items, and so someone that you trust, someone that's licensed, that's able to uh, do and help you with those different types of plans.
All right. And what's the third one again? So
So it was just two. It was
those
yes,
two. Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Those two pieces, I believe, are the defensive strategies on your friends to wealth. That will ensure that your legacy that you build or are on the road to building lives on.
Got you, got you. Okay. So we have two types of friends. We have defense friends and we have offensive friends. What are the offensive friends of wealth?
All right. All right. So before we can go into the offensive, the first thing that we want to address, which is um, number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the list here on the 7 money milestones, is cash flow. We want to make sure that we are at the point where our cash flow creates a discretionary income that is more than our expenses, of course, right? So we're not in a negative every month. We're on a positive. The reason why that's important is because if you're going to generate any type of wealth, you're going to be able to have to use discretionary income in order to do so, right? And I know we've talked about this before. The average millionaire has over 7 streams of income. 7 streams of income. So how does that happen? Well, you've probably heard the term before. It takes money to make money, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and some people will tell you, well, you can use other people's money to make money. That is true, but it's going to always start with you, right? If you are someone who has established a budget enough that you can create a discretionary income of over $500 to $1,000 a month, you're in a position now to really get into the game of understanding how can I generate and build wealth, right? So on the offensive side, once we've done that, there's about 3 or 4 things that we could do to generate wealth. The first thing we're going to look at is the traditional investing route, right? Taking money and having it compound over time. We
mm-hmm.
talk about the rule of 72, which
Yeah,
shows you how your money doubles over time, depending on the interest rate that you're getting, right? So the things I would caution you with investing is definitely do your research and
right.
make sure you're using funds that you don't mind losing, right?
Low cost index funds. Be safe at first until you do real research, like you said.
Right. So investing, that's the traditional route. Most people are aware, you take money, you put it somewhere, you watch the market grow up and down on its way up, right? But what we know about investing is over the span of 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years that although it's going up and down, it's always on its way up, right? And if we average since the early 1929s, 1920s, all the way up to now, it's averaged a 12% rate of return, right?
Wow.
So
Mm-hmm.
if we took that and we applied the rule of 72, what that's telling us is that whatever money we're putting in, it's going to double every 6 years.
Every 6 years.
Every 6 years. So that's
Mhm.
one way, traditional route going into the investing route.
One stream, positive stream.
One stream. All right. Another stream that I think a lot of people they bypass or they are apprehensive about is business.
Right.
Creating business or entrepreneurship is one of the ways to create streams of income and build wealth for yourself for a couple of reasons. First of all, you're generating income now, right? The other thing is what most people don't take into account is if you build a successful business, you can actually sell that business. You can actually transfer that business. That's another wealth transfer or legacy builder where you can transfer that business to your family, right?
Mm-hmm.
So certain things like that. There's a book by Robert Kiyosaki called The Cash Flow Quadrants. I encourage everybody to read that. And it goes over four quadrants that every person making money in the world is going to fall into.
Wow. See, we stopped at I stopped at Rich Dad Poor Dad. I didn't ever heard about the cash flow quadrants. I gotta get that book.
Yeah.
Everybody got mad at me this week because I got Jada's book. I guess I gotta get that too. Even though politically I'm not really down with what he's saying, but I'm gonna check out the book. The four quadrants, cash
The
flow
cash flow
quadrants.
quadrants. And
Okay.
he goes through the evolution of how you start off as an employee, then you graduate yourself
Oh
to
yeah, I know that. I know the quadrants. Mm-hmm.
right, you graduate yourself to a self-employed individual,
Self-employed. Mm-hmm.
then you go into business ownership, then you go into investor.
Investor. Yeah.
Right now,
Mm-hmm.
there's some pros and cons to each of those quadrants,
Right.
right? And there's more cons when you're an employee standpoint,
Employee. Yeah. You
right?
sell your time, something like that. You sell
Yeah,
your time.
right.
Yeah.
So
I know that.
your income is linear, right? So you know the amount of hours you put in equates to the amount of money that you can make, right?
Maybe.
Maybe, right? Right. Then you go into self-employed where you say, well, I'm done with having a job. I'm going to own a job
Mm-hmm.
where you own, let's say you own a restaurant where in order for you to make money, you have to open up that door every single day.
Still
And
there, y'all. Still present.
right. Yeah. So there's some pros and cons. Now it does open you up to more income, a bigger income base, but there's more work involved, right? When you go into business ownership now, you now use a concept called leverage, where you're leveraging your time and expertise to train a staff or train business partners to do the same thing that you're doing, right? So whether you're, let's say, for instance, you're in real estate and you train real estate agents to do what you do and you get a cut of all of that. So, giving an example of how that works. Um, and now when you are at a position that you have a business and you're a business owner and your capital grows to a certain extent, now you can now invest. Now you can become an investor. So that's where you see investors and things of that nature. So business is one that I would encourage everyone to explore. It doesn't have to be a huge business. It could be something that you do home base. It could be something that you do, right? Exactly. Right. So it doesn't have to be big, or big starting out, I should say. The other thing I would mention about business, which I feel that our community especially doesn't do a lot of, is collaboration in business. Meaning I pull some of my resources, you pull some of your resources, and we invest in a bigger project as business owners, as investors in a particular, situation, business, things of that nature. Right. So a lot of so we're talking about sports, right? A lot of
Mhm.
the ownership groups are just that. A lot of you'll see a face to the ownership group, but it's usually an ownership group, right? So
That owns a
uh,
sports team. Mm-hmm.
right. So you'll see one person they'll say he's the owner. Like Robert Kraft could be the owner of the Patriots,
Patriots. Mm-hmm.
but he may just be the majority owner, which is why he's the face, right?
Gotcha.
But he has a group behind him that have some shares in that ownership, right? That are just as important, right? So collaborating more, meaning come together as a community, and we'll get to the next one with, when we talk about real estate, right? How do you become investors when we could possibly buy an apartment complex
Right.
or buy a block? You've heard that concept before,
Buy back the block.
buying back the block, right? Things of that nature. So being more collaborative, especially as you look to build your wealth, utilizing smaller portions of resources to put together in a larger pool that would build that business or build that joint venture, things of that nature. If that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, it does. It does. It does.
right? So then the third thing I alluded to it is real estate, right? If you can, and I recommend to families all the time that are in transition, right? So let's say you're a family, you had a starter home, right? You're just you and your wife at first, and now you have two or three or four or five or 10 kids, and you've outgrown that house, right? Right? What do most people do? Say,
Most people make one of the worst decisions of their life, and that is to sell the house.
sell the property, right?
Hmm.
Well, when you do that, what you've just done is you just cut off your family's legacy by doing that,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Because in real estate, as you know, you make money in two ways in real estate. You make money with the rental, and you make the money with the overall asset itself, with the equity that it builds, right? So I usually recommend that to most of the families who are in that transition. Well, if you're going to buy another house anyway, why don't you use this starter home as
As
a
a,
rental,
as a rental property.
as a rental property, right?
Hmm.
um, Now you may be saying, I'm not a landlord. I don't want to be a
That's
landlord,
what everybody says.
right? But but here's the easy fix for that. You hire a property management company, and what do they charge? Anywhere from 8 to 10% of the rent. So for 10% of it, you making, let's say you're making 1,500. For
Hmm.
$150, a company can do all of the rental responsibilities for you, right? And you just do your research on, what they're going to do for you, what they don't do for you, things of that nature, and you make the best decision there. But losing out on that asset, losing out on that wealth building tool, I think is more important, than saying I don't want to do the landlord, thing.
People don't realize how much you are just renting from the bank when you buy and sell over time versus owning multiple rental properties. And it's crazy. You were talking about pooling. Um, Multiplex properties are a booming industry right now, and it's something that people need to consider. When I say multiplex, I'm talking about duplex, triplex, quadruplex. For basically, the more doors you have in a home, where you can have 2 bedroom, 1 bathroom apartments that you're renting out each $1,500 a month, just on average, right? They just came out with I think it's, can't remember the loan, can't remember who it is, but the government is basically allowing for loaning people who want to purchase multiplexes at 5% interest rate.
Mm,
Conventional loans, y'all.
yeah,
Now, how much does it cost to buy a house, a single property house, for $500,000? What's your down payment for that? For a conventional loan, 20%. 20%. Meaning, if I was to buy a house next door, I would have to pay $400,000, right, for it. But at $400,000, I would have to pay. Let's do the math. 20% of that is $80,000. I would have to pay. I would have to have 80,000 cash for a 4,000 single family house next door. I take that same $400,000 and get a fourplex, right? I will not have to have $80,000. What's 5% of $400,000, y'all?
20.
$20,000. What would cost me $80,000 to buy the house next door? I would only have to put a down payment. This is starting in November, of $20,000 on the. If I get five of my friends to, and we work at $5,000 each, we will have a fourplex. Or I get four of my friends. If I get four of my friends, and we do $5,000 each, 4 doors. What's that, y'all? 4 doors. $1,500 a door. You get $1,500 a month. 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 Just
I
for
mean,
$5,000. Just for $5,000.
and you make that initial investment back in two or three rentals, right? Rent
Yeah.
monthly payments,
Yeah.
right? So yeah. So here's an idea that I would encourage our parents, right? So I know you're big on educating our parents on the college tip, right, and
Mm-hmm.
things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
I have a client whose daughter was going to a school a couple hours up the road, right? So they said, why don't we why don't we buy a place in that area,
Mm-hmm.
have her and her friends rent it out
Mm-hmm.
while she manages it, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
it's let's say it's a 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she has two of her friends who are making the payments,
Mm-hmm.
right? As the rental. Now, 4 years down the line, it's a property they still own and they just rent it out as, you see what I mean? So
Yeah,
there's
rent it out to the friends while your daughter lives in there for free. You don't have to pay room and board for a dorm. Instead, you're having your friends' roommates paying your daughter's room and board. Plus, you have a property
just saying,
appreciating in value.
right.
Listen, y'all.
And if it's done properly,
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about 4, 5, 6, 7 years. That property could be paid off by the time she graduates,
Mm-hmm.
if it's done. You know what I mean? If it's done properly, right? So many options that you have in that space alone, to create that, that wealth, those wealth building, options there.
Offense.
Offense. All right. And that was it. I mean, you utilizing traditional investments, you utilizing business, utilizing real estate. Um, those are the three main things that people are doing these days to create wealth. And then from there, as a business owner, like you said, now you're now investing in other things. So as you have capital, now you can invest in someone who's putting an invention out, right, and they need capital. Well, you can be a partner, right? Someone who's you could be, there's individuals who fund nonprofits. They fund startups, right? Because now they have a stake in that company, right? So now when you talk about part ownership, things of that nature, that's where big boys play,
Yeah.
right? They play in the markets where you need capital in order to do so, and they're helping build the next generation of entrepreneurs and business owners and things of that nature.
Wow, thank you so much. This has been an awesome conversation about the top friends of wealth, both defense and offense. So just to remind you, make sure that you have your estate planned really, really well. Very important defensive friend. Make sure you have life insurance. Very, very important defensive friend. Offensively, make sure you have those traditional investments, whether it be 401ks, Roth IRAs, health savings accounts, individual brokerage accounts, making sure those are safely funded. You're doing your research for the stocks and bonds that are in those accounts. Traditional investments is a very important stream. Being a business owner, I tell you right now, I'm an employee. Majority of my money comes from my main job, but I do get a good amount of money. Not a good amount. I get it's taken me over a threshold that I've always wanted by speaking engagements and shoot book sales royalties I get every month, and I'm getting Facebook bonuses even though it's just 10. It was $6 last month. It's $10 this month. I'm jumping up, boy. I'm doubling my money, and it compounds.
Yeah.
So maybe next year it'll be $50 a month. All of that, these things add up when you own a business, and you get the tax write-offs as well because you own a business. And of course, real estate, specifically rental properties. Appreciating value of your home may increase your net worth, but it does not necessarily increase cash on hand like a rental property does. So I think those are the top defense and offensive friends of wealth. And it's been awesome talking to you, Kevin. Thanks so much.
Oh man, it's always a pleasure. Always a pleasure chopping it up with you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, I forgot. Do you have anything to promote?
Oh yeah.
Put in
So
the
so
caption.
as you know, we have the How Money Works Stop Being a Sucker book.
Uh-huh.
That's part of our we I think I was mentioning to you the last time we were talking. We actually came out with another book in the line of books, How Money Works for Women. Um, we just launched that book earlier this year, and it really outlines some specific areas for women as it relates to wealth and wealth building, and some things based on different scenarios with different women, whether you're single, whether you're just starting your career individual, married with kids, special needs kids. What are some things that you want to have in place in these situations? So it's been a really awesome book that's just come out for us, and we're always here to educate anyone who is in the market to want to be educated, whether you're an organization, whether you're a business, whether you're a church group. If you know that your community needs more financial education, which we all know, um, we are here to help. We're here to facilitate that. The books, if you check my pages, let me know that you want a copy of any of those books. I'll be sure to get that to you complimentary.
Kevin Ploche is on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, correct? You're on all the social media platforms.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Four-eyed finance guy. Four-eyed finance guy is the Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. I'm there on my profile, Kevin Ploche. But yeah, we're here to serve. We're here to educate, so that we can eliminate financial illiteracy out there.
Yeah, that's so important. Thanks so much to the four-eyed finance guy.
Here you go.
Yeah.
Go.
All right, y'all. It's been great. Thanks for watching. You guys have a good night. I'm the phenomenal STEMist, and so is he. Good night, everybody.